So what I wanted to talk about this morning really are those stages of mark making into emergent writing, and what supports that developmental progress. Obviously, we're going to be looking at how the environment is set up for children to get the resources they need, put the resources back, and look after resources, all those sorts of things, so they're independent and that they've got different purposes for mark making as well across the provision. I'm not suggesting, and I say this a lot if I come out to you, or if you've been on other PL, that we return to like the writing table. I don't think myself that the writing table, which is a table that's facing a wall with lots of words on it and some papers and pens and things like that, I don't think that's as effective as creating environments where children can mark, make and write in lots of different ways for different purposes in areas of provision. So that's something for you to consider. It is about, what's the quality of the resources on offer? What's the purpose of the mark making and writing that engages the learners, so they don't just think it's something to be done in lickety-split, quick, done, dusted. And then there's that whole really exciting part of mark making into writing, when you start to see them notice letters, begin to use letters in their marks and their writing. And then there are stages of spelling development that if you don't know about them, it would be useful, because then you know how to support in terms of your marking and your teaching on what's going to be the biggest benefits for children who are on that road to writing independently. So quite a lot to get through, and we'll see how we go. I found this ages ago, but I quite like it in terms of those building blocks of writing. And what we do know is, first and foremost, children need to build up their movement sense, so that's their gross and their fine motor things. But it's also about their hearing and their visual senses as well. So what kind of experiences they are having that develop those senses. The other thing is, it's really quite dangerous. I put it up now, I'm thinking, oh my God, this is very dangerous. I don't want you to think that what you have to do now is to go and test the children and make this into a tick sheet. It's not a tick sheet, it's just for us to be thinking about, can they make marks using any part of their body? Can they effectively grasp objects, any object? You're looking at the grasp that they have. I don't want anyone testing to see if children can build towers of 2-centimetre blocks. That's very, very specific, but we can look to see if they're able to do those things in their block play. Are they still threading beads or blocks or whatever it is? I know that lots of you now are doing actually sewing. So there's lots of things that we can think about before we actually start to think about introducing letters and copying. I'm going to talk about that later. But and again, in terms of the marks, there are lots of different marks that children need to be able to show you that they can control before we should be starting to ask them to write them in a more formal way. So this might help you, but as I say, I don't want it to be something that is used as a tick sheet, a checklist, a testing measure, because obviously we've moved right away from that. Anyway, first things first, what should we do? Obviously, the first thing we do is to value all marks that children make, but notice the difference in them as well. So I put up the infographic from the curriculum for funded non-maintained nursery settings for us to remind ourselves. And I think, again, when I've been going around, I think this is where quite a lot of practitioners are struggling, is that are they noticing something that's significant? And are they analysing what that significance is in terms of learning? And then are they making some kind of decision about whether to respond and how to respond? Sometimes you don't need to respond as well. So that just keep going with your team around what did you notice? Is that different? Is it the same? Do you always see it? Was it worth writing? What does that mean in terms of the learning? And what might we do to see that more often? Do we only see it in one place? So I would definitely say to you as leaders, keep focusing on that, the process of observation. What the other thing I've seen sometimes is that if you try and put a template on for this, notice, analyze and respond, it can become quite formulaic. And you might not be getting the best out of it. I think if you talk more about this process of observation, so what are we noticing? What does it mean to us? And how might we respond verbally? I think that might impact on the quality of the written observations as they come through. Anyway, let's look at these 4 pictures. Number 1, I think probably everybody in the room has a wall that children make their marks first as they enter into nursery or reception class that says, "This is me." And I always love this wall because as soon as I see it, I can tell by the quality of the drawings and the content of the drawings and the detail of the drawings, the children who've had lots of experience of drawing and mark making, and those who are very, very new to it. So the ability to represent myself as a person is a journey, and we can see lots of differences in that top left-hand corner. And I think, again, what most of you do then is to add new ones on top, maybe termly, to see the progress. Great idea. The top right one is obviously working on a whiteboard. That's important because it helps the children. If you do, I'm doing it right now, and you can't see me, thank God. But when they're on the whiteboard, they're actually using their shoulder muscles much more. And the control of your fingers starts in your shoulder, elbows, wrist, fingers. So whiteboards are really good for stretching and moving those gross motor skills. Again, we might have seen what we can see on the left, on the right. This is a nursery, and you can see at the moment they're just playing with making marks and changing colours by the looks of it. Bottom left, this is a child's writing. I think this one tells me an awful lot about the child, probably had a lot to say. And probably said it really fast. You know, there's a lot of energy in that writing, isn't it? But that writing is up on the wall and is valued by all the children, and it was displayed in an area where the child could go back and talk about it. And then we have the one on the bottom right, where you can see here the child's, I thought the child was on a bus. I thought it was a bus, but it's not. It's windows in the setting. But very clearly has a schema, a way of drawing for this is how I represent people, and it's very consistent. So that kind of, this is how I represent people, this is how consistent those drawings are, helps me to understand that they're beginning to get a sense of repetition of what things look like, and they always look the same. And that's what happens with letters and numbers, isn't it? An A always looks like this, a B always looks like that. So that's bottom right then tells me a lot about, I think the little girl's name was Aubrey. Can you see that at the bottom? So really interesting in those 4 photographs to look at the different, what we can pick up from observing and looking really deeply at children's mark making and valuing it. So mark making starts off I've taken things from the curriculum because I think most of you are using it in your nursery classes, which is lovely. So as soon as ever they can, really, young children actively seek knowledge and skills that are both within and beyond their current capabilities. And when supported and enabled, they can focus attention for extended periods of time on things that are of interest to them. As their exploration develops, they rehearse and practice and emergent theories, both alone and with others. That's an exploration. So mark making is about exploring how I can represent what I know, what I'm beginning to understand about the world around me. We've got an example here of obviously a beautiful spider and a nice invitation at the side there of a spider's web. So if we think about children's drawings and writing, then a lot of the marks they make in their drawings help them later on with their letter formation. So everything links. In the right hand picture, this child was very interested in counting and representing numbers and quantities. So that, and I know that activity went on for a very, very long time. In terms of thinking about where will I find this in that curriculum, I went to 2 places, and I probably would go to these 2 places quite a lot. So I am learning to communicate my ideas through mark making. I found that in exploration. Use simple mathematical language in my play and with purpose in the exploration. So this is within play as well. So rather than us trying to think about use simple mathematical language in a let's say a directed teaching task or a heavily adult scaffold task, we want to see if the children are using the language and starting to use the symbols or their symbols to represent their understanding of mathematical concepts and language. So in communication, we have use mark making tools with increasing control. What does that look like? It is about pencil pressure, is about making decisions about what they want to use and what they want their mark makings to represent. And then the last bullet there in communication is assign my own meaning to my marks. So be really clear about that when it says assign my own meaning to my marks. So rather than being told what to write or what to make marks on, it's important that when we're talking to children, we ask them, tell me about this, whether it's a drawing or what have you said here, or what would you like to say? And then that's more open than asking them to do a specific task that you might test to see if they can. Do you see the difference there? I hope so. Okay. God, this is really awful. I'm just talking and I have no idea if you're still in the room, you might have gone. Okay. So you know that I'm very, very keen on us introducing more play into children's early experiences in nursery and in reception. But I'm going to say a little caveat here, because again, it's things that I've noticed on my visits, is that I seem to be seeing quite a lot of toys being used in the classroom, and children are playing with them, obviously. So I'm not saying don't have toys, but I want you to look at the quality of the play with the toys. So I'm seeing lots of cars and lorries and action figures and what's the other dolls, houses, dolls, lots and lots and lots of that. And when I ask about the quality, I don't get the quality. What I get is the children love it. Well, they will love it. And my response has been, so tell me what learning is going on. So when you go back, or right now maybe, I want you to think about when you're monitoring the experiences on offer for the children, thinking about the learning opportunities that they're having. And the other thing I would say is about the quantity. You will be like me, I would imagine, that, you know, when you have too many things to choose from, it's really difficult to make a choice. So I think I would be saying to you, limit how much is on offer for the children, but that what you have is quality over quantity, and then quality linking to the open-endedness of the resources for children to be able to really actively play in a way that is developing their thinking, their social, and their communicative skills. So learning can be and is achieved through play, but I'm putting a strong caveat on that in terms of what we're giving them to play with. Assessment of progress should always focus on what children can do. And again, I think sometimes, particularly as children start to develop in their terms of their writing, we might want to rush them ahead for all the things they can't do. So I always go back to my experience of being a reading recovery teacher and a tutor, when we used to really focus on, however small the item of knowledge was for the individual child, as it was for reading recovery, we focused on that, and we got them from that known to the nearly known, rather than going from known to lots of unknowns. Again, that's around choice and building on those building blocks of learning. So enabling adults should, I've said this already, I think, observe play and model context for writing when appropriate to the play. So thinking about where can you model that, a context for writing. I would imagine, I know there are lots of opportunities for you to do that if you're in the role play, for example, but there are other places where you can model writing too. You might help them in their block play if they want to. You okay? And certainly outside, if they wanted to make signs and labels, if there are, if you've got a mud kitchen, but let them do some of that, or you can do it, and then they can transfer that knowledge for themselves. And also, even if you've got these larger pieces of paper, collaborative work, you can be modeling, maybe writing their names, for example, because the names are usually the first place to start. Okay. So I looked then at physical developments. So getting ready for writing, what do we know about that? All children have a natural need to move or be moved, and to move or manipulate objects, often repeatedly as part of their development. That's part of the schema coming through. It involves both gross motor and fine motor manipulation, as we know. And these motor movements become refined over time into smoothly coordinated movements. So time and opportunity is important. So repetition and variety are critical, and they explore their increase in physical capabilities. So the more, I think, particularly for the gross motor, the more that they're outside and they're doing a range of motor movements outside, the better able they're going to be later on to be to have all the attributes that good writers need. And that's about muscle, core strength, the ability to sit in a comfortable way at a table, all those sorts of things. Having said that, I think also I'm just going to just talk to you as well, because it's something else I've been thinking about. Children need to develop their core strength. They can do it outside, but when they come in, if you have too many tables with seats at the table, then they're not developing that core strength as much as they could be. So again, you could be looking at, have we got too many tables? You know, do they need to sit when they're, is that the best thing for them to do actually when they're doing their creative work? Is it better for them to stand and lean and stretch when they're doing those things, rather than sit and actually be restricted. So think about those things on the side here. We've got large scale work inside and out. That helps again with collaboration and children talking together and learning from each other as well. Thinking about, if you've gone with my 4 key areas in your provision, your creative investigative areas, having things accessible like clay, dough, wood, thread, see lots more of that going on. That I see on Twitter anyway. I know not all schools are on Twitter, and I don't see all schools who are on Twitter, I'm not saying X. But that creative area supports children's writing, so they should be doing a lot of that as well. And I think we've already talked about vertical and horizontal surfaces, strengthening the shoulder, elbow, wrists, before we move on to fine motor and finger manipulation. You shouldn't need to have, I don't think, a separate area where you're doing fine motor skills. You should be seeing that in all your areas of provision. Oh, and look at this already. I'm going to be repeating myself, unfortunately, so sorry. So whole body, I've already said about standing, develops balance and core stability is really important. Obviously running, jumping, climbing. Proprioception is around children's awareness of their bodies in space. And that's important again for later on when they're trying to get letters onto a line. They have to have good sense of where their hand needs to be on the page in order to get that in the right place. But first of all, we need to start with the body awareness. It's important that children can use both sides of their bodies, and crossing the midline is really important. So lots of activities where they're crossing the midline and using both sides, whether that's crawling or stretching or touching your toes, whatever it could be, that they have those opportunities. And we don't rush that particularly. So again, anecdotally, people will say that children, particularly in nursery classes, appear not to have had those experiences that you would expect younger babies, children to have. So if they haven't had them, then our job is to give them to them in school, and also maybe educate the parents too. So we've just got here just a couple of examples of being out in a forest school. Obviously that's from the curriculum. Just using large loose parts for children to make their own, I can't think what the word is. I'm going to say ramps, but it's not ramps, you know what I mean. So they have to balance, be aware of where they're placing their feet, making their own snack. So not only is this about preparing them for writing, but it's also developing their independence as well, isn't it? And then using that, you're getting out the seeds from the pumpkin, using your fingers to develop that fine motor skills. Oops. So just some examples from schools that appear to be more prevalent now. I'm hoping that the photographs give you a sense of what I talked about at the beginning, which is not having too many resources out, and that children know how to return resources. So that returning to a resource is actually a mathematical skill, concept, and will help them with their maths as well as their mark making and writing. So things like having clipboards near to the block play, but not particularly in nursery reception, not insisting that they write or mark make or draw either what they're going to build, because they don't rethink about what they're doing. They actually explore the blocks first and what they can do. And weaving. So weaving, again, see more of that, but you can have it on a loom like this one. You can weave outside in your gates or your fences. You can weave with paper. You can weave with, oh God, I'm doing my which you can't see, leaves, all sorts of things that you can weave in. And again, the more opportunity they have to weave with different surfaces and materials, the better will be their skills. Clay, I think I've said this a lot, clay has better viscosity than Play-Doh, which means they've got to knead it more and press and push more, which develops their fingers better. These sorts of things are still important. Observational drawings, drawing from observation of real things. Cutting, colouring, pasting, puzzles, yes. Making patterns as decoration is important. Having clipboards, pencils, markers in areas of provision, yes. A sufficiently stocked area of high quality resources, and one that, bottom right, has things that are easy to return to set. So children are getting used to putting things back where they belong. They're not all piled into one big tub, and lids go missing, and pencils are not, this is my bugbear. You know, at the end of the day, either get the children or somebody to sharpen pencils. Don't give them stubby things. Don't give them tiny bits of crayon. So if we go back to engaging experiences and effective environments, it's down to the level of detail like that, you know. Do you demonstrate to the children how to look after resources and care for things so that they can do the same? And then having obviously a variety of papers on offer and in use in different places. Okay, lots and lots of times I see when block play has done really well, the children choose to make their own marks using a variety of resources to do that. Either that's close by, or they might have had to go and find for example, the second one in. That paper might have been in your creative and investigative area, and they're going to get the paper and the sellotape and come back. And just thinking about here too, writing is also about that oral rehearsal of writing, so telling stories. So listen carefully to what the children are telling you or talking about when they're in their block play, particularly if the block play has been influenced, for example, in the third one, by a story that you've been doing. So are they retelling the story in the block play? So being able to retell a story verbally is going to help your writing later on. Okay, I'm going to stop for 1 minute because I'm aware that I'm just talking. Could 1, 2, 3 of you unmute and say whether the pitch is right for you and whether you have examples of this? Anything at all, just so I know I'm not talking to a screen.
Hi, yeah, this is very useful, really good for us. Thank you.
And who are you and where are you from?
Donna, I'm Donna Squirrel from St. David's.
Donna Squirrel, thank you. I just love your name, I'm going to say it all the time. Thank you, Donna Squirrel.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Hi, it's Lucy Pierce here from Ysgol Gymraeg Gwynllew.
Hi, Lucy.
Hi, you okay?
Yeah, good.
Good. Yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying and listening and looking at all the lovely pictures. It's giving me quite, you know, a few good ideas. So I've got my notebook and I'm writing, you know, all my ideas down as well. So yeah, thank you very much.
Lovely. And I'll see you in block play soon.
Yes. Yes,
lovely,
you will.
Lovely. Okay, good. And I should actually, they're not, some people will be here. The photographs are obviously schools and settings, but they do speak very loudly around quality, I think. Any more?
Hi, yes, Charlotte from Mundy.
Hi, Charlotte.
Hi. I just think I recently went to Risca. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we loved the block play.
Yeah,
So we originally had, because we were 2 form entry, we had 2 block plays, but then we decided to make it bigger and better
Yeah.
by combining, and it's
Yeah,
made a
lovely.
huge difference. And I
Fabulous.
think so far, looking at your pictures, we've actually got everything that you've suggested in there, and we've got children drawing their designs now. We are reception, and I just feel like going to Risca and seeing that, and then seeing what you're promoting today is
Yeah.
that we're doing okay, which is good to know.
Very good to know, Charlotte. Lovely. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I'll let Risca know that they've had a good impact too. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. I'll crack on and then we'll do a few more. That's fair. So, thinking about the variety, I find this quite useful as well. So when you can be doing this as well, thinking about, so do children have a variety of things to make marks with? So felt pens, put those lids on. Brushes, make sure they're standing up with the brush up, not in, drives me nuts. Pencils, sharpened. Chalks, crayons, no stubbies, can't bear them. Sticks, fingers, and any other loose part. Okay, in terms of they can make marks in sand, and they might use some of those things on the width in the sand, obviously. Sand, clay, paint, gloop, glitter. I've got glitter there, but I will say if you're going to use it, you use it judiciously if we're going to be ethically informed citizens. And if you can buy the one that's more environmentally friendly, do that. Otherwise, maybe no glitter. Mud, shaving foam, and again, same thing really with rice and salt. I used to have that when I was in reception class. I used to have like little the shallow baking trays, and I'd put salt in them. I'm only a little bit nervous, obviously, of saying use food, but maybe it's gone out of date, something like that. I've got to check myself with my ethical hat on. But yeah, the children used to have small, the shallow trays. Are they called baking trays? They might be. And I used to have high frequency words, just a few, and then the children would take them out and then write them with their fingers in the high frequency words, or they write their names or whatever they chose to do. So I think this is really useful just to think about, and the variety of, do they write on card, on paper, on walls? Only the walls that you suggest they do it on, obviously. On whiteboards, on clipboards, on blackboards, on easels, and on the floor again. Lying down actually again is going to help them to stretch those shoulders, wrists. Sorry, I missed up the elbow. Shoulder, elbow, wrists. But not on the floor, Okay, and then just look at, this is a photograph from a nursery. So all of the paintbrushes are standing up, thank the Lord, but they're also sorted into small, medium and large. So children get to know which paintbrushes go where. Nice idea with the ramekins there, if you trust your children. Just in the background, this is what I liked. So they've got a clay area. And if you can see, just towards the top middle bit of the photograph, I hope you can see, they've got a bowl there of warm soapy water and a towel. So children then have to wash their hands at the end of their session and dry them in the towel. Or if you've got your clay near to the creative investigative areas, should be, if you've got water in your classroom, should be there so they can go and wash their hands in the sink. But just, it's about thinking about the layout of your classroom, isn't it? I find that, whatever that thing is called, really useful anyway. Right. So basically, there are 3 broad purposes for writing. So you might want to write for yourself. The children might want to write notes and diaries and lists. They might want to just write their name or somebody else's name, or they might want to, in terms of the personalness of it, it might be actually drawings, but they'll say it's their writing, if you know what I mean. So the other purpose is obviously imaginative, so writing for others, that's where you come in. So retelling stories, making up poems and plays later on, I'd say. And then that functional writing, so understanding that writing has a purpose that's going to help either me or other people to know what to do, basically. So whether that's writing a recipe, writing instructions, making signs, making labels, making instructions. So just on that one, would you say that your children have that have those experiences? Do they have opportunities to write for themselves? Do they have all three opportunities? Do they have them all the time, only some of the time? And where do they have them? So if anyone else would like to unmute and just share, that would be really helpful. Nice idea, that one on the top left, isn't it, with the little clips? And you can see a good range there of different writers. Anybody brave? Anybody going to unmute and say, where do they do those things? Do they do them all in books? Do some of those things go on in areas of provision?
Hi, it's Sian Langford.
Oh, hi, Sian.
Hi, yeah. Sorry, my children are in the background because they have an inset day. Just to say that we've got lots of writing in the areas, but I'd say the area that's more, well, that they enjoy the most writing in is role play. They love to have like biros in our role play, and they forever writing in that area. We do also have, obviously, I'm reception. We have writing books as well.
Yeah.
But we do try to kind of include more writing opportunities, but I suppose this has given me the chance to reflect on like some of the areas that I think that we could probably include writing in a little bit more. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sian. I haven't seen you for ages.
No, hopefully I'll see you soon.
Yeah. Anyone else, or shall I move on? I might have to move on because let me tell you, I'm on 14 of 51 slides. And it's 10:15. Oh, I might have to speed up, mightn't I? Right. So, I said earlier on about in order for children to become writers and they might retell their stories in the block play. Actually, what they also need is it's really basic stuff, but it's like reading influences writing. Reading influences the vocabulary. So another key area of provision would always be high quality, well-stocked, fully inclusive reading corners, where children come in, have books read to them, read books, and then I'm going to go back to something that I used to talk about a long time ago, which is those three elements of reading. Reading to, which is obviously when you've got your book, whether that's a big book or a picture book, and you share that with, and I'm going to say this now, I'm going to say it, it's going to be a book. It's not going to be something on a screen. I want to see the children being modelled reading books, turning pages, looking at pictures, seeing the words. So reading to is above their reading ability, but you are soaking them in the language of stories. And that's what reading to is all about, soaking them in the language of stories. So when they come on later on to be writers, they have that some of those key phrases already within their vocabulary. Once upon a time, three little somethings, and then. And it's really funny, isn't it? But I don't know many stories that end with, and they all lived happily ever after. But that always appears later on in their writing, which I quite like. Okay, so that's the reading to. So, you know, how often are you reading to them? Is it only whole class, or does, if you're using key worker groups, do they have more opportunities than that, than once a day in a whole group to hear a story and interact with a story with an adult? Reading with them is obviously when you start, not in nursery, I hope, in reception, where you you introduce your guided reading. And reading with is really important for you to then, you set up those reading strategies of always starting on the left, one-to-one correspondence, the return sweepers lines go across the page, looking at the picture to get help if you don't know a word, all those sorts of things. So reading with, that's your teaching bit, isn't it? You're teaching them how to read. And then reading by is when they can read by themselves and for themselves. So when I was in a classroom, which I know is a long time ago now, but we always had, I would introduce a book to the group would read the book, we'd read it twice, it would go into their, what we call the familiar book box. And then when I was doing reading with a group, another group was always in their familiar book box, either reading by themselves or reading to each other. So those would be their guided reading books that they were able to read because they'd already read it 2 or 3 times with me. And I'm not sure that that is still the case. I haven't done a lot on reading for a while, but I just wanted to flag it to you that really, if we want them to be good writers, then we've got to support them with their reading as well. You can't, the two go hand in hand, and then obviously reading and writing are underpinned by good speaking and listening, basically. So reading to them gives them that language for storytelling or poetry or whatever it's going to be, rhythm and rhyme when you've got those lovely stories. Familiar tales and well-loved books build up their vocabulary. I think I talked about that earlier on. And then in the with and the by, children see and hear words over and over in consistent places. So those high frequency words, here is the something, here is the something else, if you've got PM books or books that are similar, obviously. So knowing where the writing starts, it starts on the left. So, sorry, yeah, the writing that they're reading. So that will help them when they start to do their writing. They'll automatically know to go to the left and to work across the page. It supports the structure of writing. So, you know, that rudimentary understanding of, right, I've got to introduce something's going to happen in the middle, and then I've got to finish it up some way. So that resolution. And a couple of days ago on Twitter, I'd seen, I haven't put in here, unfortunately, if the Welsh School is here, I think it's Casnewydd, had lovely examples of writing story maps. And I'd asked if I could use the photographs. And then Pi Corbett had come on and just said, please direct them to the Talk for Writing website, because there's loads of examples on there as well. So if you're not obviously using him, then I'd hop over to the Pi Corbett website as well. But, you know, there's some lovely things here going on. I love, these are all well-loved tales. So we've got Alice in Wonderland, but using cards. I love that idea. And black felt pens, they are my go-to. If I want to see anything on a wall, I want to see it with a black felt pen. And that gives children confidence as well, because you know, sometimes children get really anxious about if they got a pencil, and particularly when they're writing, and they want to rub it out all the time. Well, you can't do that with a felt pen. Once you made your mark, you made your mark. So we've got Alice in Wonderland. We've got the Three Billy Goats Gruff, and then we've got Jack and the Beanstalk. So nice examples of how those stories are influencing children's retelling in different ways. Oops. You can also use different contexts to represent their learning as well. So maybe if they've been on a visit and they can talk about the visit, where they went, they can make their own map in that way. Got another example there of a Pi Corbett strategy. And then in the middle there, that one is nursery class. They'd been reading A Squash and a Squeeze. And they were, I think this one has a video of it, but I haven't got the video. I think there were 2 girls in particular here, and they wrote all of those letter shapes along the top there. But every time they drew an animal, they were talking about the animal and talking about what the animal did or what the animal said. So there was lots and lots of language going on there. It's lovely, very simple, not too much again. And this was something that it was left up so lots of different children could come and add to it. It wasn't just 1 or 2 children. You might think about some nice examples here of different ways that they can write on. So here again, there's that Alice in Wonderland. So what you remember in that last one, it was they were writing on card, but also covering boxes, making that into something that can be displayed on the wall. Nice plain paper. Middle one, God, this is donkey's years old, that middle one, but you know, making a word ladder. I'm going to talk about the third photograph in a bit more detail, and it's not to do with writing, but I want you all to take this idea on board, I think, because I think it's absolutely wonderful. It's come from a nursery setting, a non-maintained setting, and she was aware that, and I see this a lot as well, the dolls weren't really loved properly in the role play area. They were dirty. They might have lost an eye or a leg or an arm or whatever. They were very, very occasionally dressed, if at all, and usually hanging off something or, you know, shoved in the tumble dryer, whatever they had in the role play. So what she decided to do was to give each of the dolls a scrub up and a clean for first off, but then to make a one-page profile for each of the dolls, and again, not to have too many dolls in there. And that profile, knowing her children, she made sure that the profile was similar to the children in her setting. So one of the dolls was a looked after child. Another one of the children, dolls, had one mummy. Another one had 2 daddies, you know, that kind of thing. So that you build up that sense of belonging. So you tell the children about the dolls, you know, get dresses in. She has, they're very Frobelian now, so the children weave blankets, and then those blankets go into the home corner for the babies, for the dollies. This was then taken on, you can see this is Chinese New Year, but done in a really more authentic way, I feel, than, you know, doing the tokenistic Chinese New Year activity. So in this one, we've got a dolly. It's going to be her, it is her birthday. Look, she's 2, she could be 3, she could be 4, she could be 5, doesn't matter. She's been given a name, she's got a present there, they've written a card to her. So can you see how purposeful and meaningful that role play area is? The time of the year has become, because people have invested a bit more thought and care into the resources on offer and how they're used to best effect. So and the one on the right there is just, you know, if you haven't got white paper and a black felt pen, then let's have black paper and a silver or a white pen. Lovely, 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 because it stands out, particularly if it's going up on a wall. And again, we can see the representation of the child. So in terms of adults and their support, helping children to go from the nearly known to the known. So you fix up errors and you use prompts like, well, it sounds like that, but it looks like this. I said but then, and I think I would try not to say but say and. So whilst photograph number 2 is lovely, actually the child has written all of those words from the sounds he or she can hear. Yeah. So I think it would be, what's the word I'm looking for? It's inherent upon us to help children to see, to understand that there are 2 routes to writing. One is how words sound, and one is how words look. So again, in your provision, how often are children seeing the words they need to see and hearing the strategies for hearing sounds in words. So just thinking about that. So yeah, I covered all that one. Sorry. So things to think about when you're thinking about introducing writing to children. Again, this is not a test that you say, come and draw me a circle, draw a triangle, draw a square. If the children have lots of opportunities for drawing, you will see those shapes within their drawings. Okay, not testing them. Do they have good pencil pressure? That's really important. Do they hold the pencil in the right place? Do they show a willingness to try? Often children will start to show you that they're like that picture just a couple of slides ago where they were doing the farm. You could see there some children were starting to recognise letters, probably from their names. So that willingness to try is really important. Do they talk about their drawings, and do they make different marks for talk than for pictures? So when they're making their marks for someone saying something, or this is my writing, they might say this says blah 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 blah, rather than this is mummy and daddy and da 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 da. So there's a difference there. I said the bit about using writing in different places, but do they recognise their name, and do they start to make the letter-like shapes to represent those letters in their names? And do they start to recognise that some of their friends have their names start with the same as theirs, or so and so and so and so, they've got the same, you know, that. So as soon as they start to do that, you know that they're starting to pay attention to print. And once they're paying attention to print, then you can start to introduce writing, emergent writing, but not before you see these sorts of things and you think about all that provision that we've had before. So this is the range of writing that you're going to see. So in the Enabling Learning Guidance, I just pulled out a quote there: engaging experiences will help learners to notice and develop their understanding of symbolic representation and support them to recognise that they carry meaning. There should be opportunities for learners to experiment with a range of mark-making instruments and materials across a range of contexts as they begin to attribute meaning to their marks. I'm going to reinforce that they attribute the meaning to their marks. They do. Learners need practical experiences that encourage them to use simple mathematical vocabulary when exploring quantity, numbers, shape and pattern. But you will see lots and lots of those marks if the children have plentiful opportunities to do it. So you've seen some of these before. So we've got, going back to that, observing, so looking at scribbling first off, but not devaluing the scribble as well. You'll start to see letter-like forms coming in. You'll see some maybe random letters. You might see some letters sequences that appear often. You'll see invented spelling, then conventional spelling, but conventional spelling, correct spelling, actually doesn't happen till around between 8 and 11. We're actually trying to force them to do it too soon in some ways, so that, you know, they'll start to sort and classify and discriminate different kinds of letters and words, and they find ways of writing for a purpose and communicating. I think the other thing I would say on that is, in terms of that scribbling, you will see before the letter-like forms, you will start to see them, particularly when they're assigning their meaning to their marks for writing, that mostly they will start with that travelling marks. I'm waving my finger up and down and going from left to right now. So you'll see that going from left to right across the page. And then, so in the second photograph, child had done some drawings, as you can see, and made some repeated marks. Might be T's, might be X's, might be F's, not sure. But he then wanted to say, so for each word there is a mark, and they are different, aren't they? I don't know, because I wasn't there, whether he was asked tell me about your picture. What do you want to say? And maybe, I don't know whether the adult wrote those lines first. I don't know whether the adult wrote those lines after. I don't know that because I wasn't there to observe it, but that would be something that I would want to know if I saw it somewhere. I'd want to have that conversation. And then that bottom left one, you can see lots of different kinds of marks, but that child is definitely moving from left to right across the page. Quite a nice little pencil grip as well, actually, isn't it? So what is the adult role, the role of the adult, the role of the enabling adult? So obviously capturing children's language is important. Modelling that writing process in different contexts. Teaching letter formation when you have made the call that they are ready for it. Definitely teach letter formation. It makes everybody, including, most importantly, the child's life, much easier. Taking words to fluency, that means doing them over and over and over, so they don't have to think about how to write the word the, look, and, because they have taken those words to fluency, and that means then those bread and butter words, I call them, they can use, they're used to hang the rest of the story, the writing on, really. And then co-constructing writing is where you offer your support where it's needed. So we don't place them in a position where we're asking for every single sound in every single letter, if that is too arduous for them. So again, in a reading recovery situation, it was slightly different because we always worked with felt pens, so that when you were writing, same colour. Except for the fact that my handwriting would have been better than a 4-year-old's or a 5-year-old's. The child didn't notice the difference. So that, I don't know whether that'll work or not work, but that certainly we did that. So co-construction. And obviously opportunities to write in books so that you can see that progress over time. I think that's important for yourselves, for anyone who's coming in to look at the development of writing, but most importantly for the children to go back and look up, you know, where I was and where I am now, and teach those basics well. And the basics really are like a handwriting, spacing, full stops, capital letters. And I think sometimes we try to do too much and not get these things really well embedded, so that they start to become undone quite a lot of the time in year 1, I'd say. So just in terms of enabling learning, you know, essential for adults to observe, notice and respond sensitively to those learners, making decisions about when and how to intervene in constructing meaning. You could enabling adults create an environment that's communication rich. So communication is speaking, listening, reading and writing. And modelling multiple ways of expression. So you can express yourself verbally, you might express yourself through symbolic dance, not for me, and or mark making and writing, which is what we're talking about today. So it's about those skillful interactions, and I'll come on to some examples in a bit. And just that last bit that says they model appropriate use of context-specific language and concepts. So rather than asking children for words you know they don't have, feed the words in. Feed the words in. It's really important. Now, I'm not even sure if this is the right place for this slide, but I just thought I'd put it up. Well, let's get myself on my right clicker. Right, there we go. Move right there. So if we look at progression step 1, age 5, by the end of reception for some children, and actually at the beginning of reception for others. This is what we're aiming for, that children can communicate by making marks, drawing symbols, or writing letters or words in a range of contexts. I'm beginning to form letters correctly using an appropriate grip. I'm beginning to write using familiar words and phrases. I can write words and phrases by using knowledge of letters and the sounds they represent. I have an awareness of how words are separated by spaces. I'm beginning to have an awareness of how capital letters and full stops demark sentences. Actually, that's not a lot when you think about it. What's important is that they get those opportunities over and over and over and over again, as I've said, in different contexts. So they become very, very familiar with them. Progression step 2, quite a big leap to I can write legibly. I can spell common irregular words correctly. But it's about right, because progression step 2 is age 8, isn't it? Is that right? Please tell me I'm right. Anyone? Unmute. Come on. Progression step 2. Yes?
Yes.
Thank the Lord, I thought you'd all left. Right. So remember what I said earlier on about, between 8 and 11 is when actually children really nail, if they're going to nail, spelling. I can use my knowledge of letters and sounds and patterns accurately in my spelling. I can attempt to spell more difficult words plausibly using a range of strategies. I sometimes think that we ask that of year 2 children. Some year 2 children will cope, most definitely, with a lot of that. But some year 2 children won't. So, are we differentiating between expectations and needs of support in terms of their spelling and writing development? I might skip over some of this, but you can just have a very quick look at a gorgeous tortoise. But observational drawings do actually help children to become competent writers, because a lot of the lines that they use in observational drawings and or any drawing actually will later on be supportive of their writing of letters. Okay, so this is what I wanted to show you. So we've already talked about the boy on the left, and then here's a little piece of writing. Humpty Dumpty is bald and has no hair. He wears, I think it's, I don't know what that last word is, something clothes. I don't know. He wears blue jeans and a spotty shirt. Humpty Dumpty is wearing yellow boots with black buttons. So when I looked at that piece of writing, I thought about, so where would I go if it was me to think about what does the child already know, almost, and where might I be able to help in terms of moving the learning forward? So this is what I think. You might disagree, and I'm happy for you to say that. I think it's important that we try and think about, do we help them to get better next time, by choosing the right words to focus on. So so he knows how to spell hair. So he uses the air that he knows from hair into wears. Great, because they sound the same. This is why English is so complicated. And then he repeats it in wearing. So I could have maybe gone with that one, but then I'm thinking, actually, I think this is a year 1 class. That might be too complex for him at this time. Actually, it might be better for me to help him to hear sounds in whole words first. So can you see he's got booze for boot? And I think that is what I might have done there. I might have picked it with as well. I wouldn't do 3, but anyway, let me just go with this for a minute. So if I was doing this, I would write 3 sound boxes in pencil, because I was working in a felt pen, don't forget that. And then I'd help him to say, right, you've got most of that word right, boots. Let's see if we can hear it. Let's take this off for now. Boot, what do you hear at the end? And then he would write the words in to create the word boot. And then I would say, and if we want to write boots, we put the S at the end. Does that make sense? Please, somebody say something.
Yeah, I really like that idea.
Okay, okay. And then yeah, I've chosen button. I'm not sure that I would choose button in reality. I think I would have gone with boot so that he understands I've got to have a whole word, boot, and then I can add an S, because that is generative. That means if I wanted to write socks, I'd write sock first, and then I put the S on the end. If I wanted to write lids, I'd write lid, and I put the S on the end. So I'm building up that generative spelling. If, however, I wanted to look at letters in words, and double letters are really hard, and I think that one, I haven't chosen a great one, just pretend, right? Just pretend. I definitely wouldn't choose this one. So you said buttons, but I think he's written buttons. I can't see properly. But let's just pretend. So in this one, I would say button looks like this. And then I'd have a single box for each letter I see. So that's different from the top one. Top one is sound boxes, bottom one is letter boxes, and letter boxes would come, I wouldn't be doing it on this year one child. I'd probably be doing it in year two, or on a child who's showing me greater control of irregular spellings. Is that okay? But I just want, for this, I just wanted to show you the difference between sound boxes and letter boxes. I'll skip over that one. You can just see that writing and drawing together collaboratively is really helpful. So I'm just going to go through what could be the barriers to writing development. I have used this quote for as long as I can remember. When I used to be in St Andrews in my reading recovery room, it was always up on the wall. Reading and writing float on a sea of talk. So, you know, unless you have, like I've talked about a lot now, you know, unless you have a really good vocabulary, that you can hear rhythm and rhyme, and that you can listen well, as well as talk, then your reading and writing is going to be hampered, I would say, hampered possibly. So we've got to develop their oral language competence, speaking and listening. There might be limited opportunities for them to fully develop their gross motor skills and then refine their fine motor skills. We might be pushing them on too quickly. We might think, oh, we haven't got time to let them out, or no, they can't climb that tree because they might fall off. All kinds of things that we put barriers in. We might have scaffolds that actually limit independent learning. So that would be things like, you know, having all the words they need to write in front of them, they just got to copy them into the book. That doesn't help you as a writer at all, at all, at all, at all. They might be tracing over letters or lines or whatever it is. Now, again, I don't think that helps at all. What I will say, though, is when I was in reception and I wanted to help them with fixing up a letter, then I would actually use a yellow pen, write it with them so they could see it, give the pattern of around, up and down, put my starting spot on there, and then let them go over the top so I could see it at the point it was happening. And then they might do a few more so that I could see, right, we're getting that letter A. The other thing I used to do was, you know, get my finger, you can't see me, but get my finger and write it on the palm of their hand, saying around, up and down. I'd write it on their back, saying around, up and down. So multi-sensory way for them to feel and see the rhythm of that letter shape. Going back to the scaffolds that limit, the other thing that limits, I think, is the amount of adult support. So if it's labour intensive and the adults there going, right, what can you hear? What does it look like? That screams to me that child's not ready. Not ready. And that support is not helpful. They might have limited spelling strategies. I think this did come through actually in a lot of schools, found out that when they went heavy down pushing phonics and not thinking about sight vocabulary, high frequency words, that children then in year 1 in particular got very, very stuck at attacking all words through the sounds they heard, not how they looked. So you've got to have that balance. They've got to be seeing words, and they've got to be able to build words up and break them apart in terms of their phonics. They might have limited reading knowledge and experience, do with by. They might have too much too soon. So they've just finished a nursery class. They've had lovely experiences of all these different kinds of mark makings. They come into reception in September, all of them, and they have a small book. It's half and half, and they're expected to write on lines when they haven't really come to grips with making their letters small yet. And all of a sudden there's too much to be coping with to be able to get that piece of writing onto a page. So too soon, line paper, letter formation, phonics, copying, the length of writing you want them to do, the type of writing you want to do. Are you jumping around doing, a letter one week, a recipe another week, a list another week. Lists and recipes don't help me become a good narrative writer. They're great for the purposeful use in my areas of provision, but in terms of me becoming a good reader, a good writer in reception, they're not going to help me. Stories will, retelling something I've done will, but lists and recipes and instructions less so. So just think about that as well. You nipping around the genres too much. I'd limit the amount of genres. Also, the last bit, which is linked to the previous slide, contingent teaching. So, so nothing happens after my piece of writing that I've done. So the teacher might put the words I haven't written properly above or below or somewhere. They might just say, well done. And they haven't picked up on words that are going to help me to become better next time. So that's about the contingent teaching. And particularly when they're younger, you've got to do it at the point it happens. There's no point in writing in their book and say, come back and look at that in 2 days' time, because it's gone. So those are things that might be barriers. So I recommend that when they start in reception, if you're introducing them to books, that they have plain books. Should have put that bit in actually. So plain paper, no lines. It's presented in a landscape. So when I got one of my old reception books here, but you can't see it. My children used to draw at the top. And they drew with detail. We'd be saying, oh, tell me more about that. Have you got any hands? Have you got any shoes? Well, you're not wearing any shoes today. So that the drawings became more detailed because we were talking to them. And then we would invite them to write about their drawing. So tell me about your drawing. What would you like to say? Or tell me about the story. What would you like to say? And they were invited to orally rehearse what they wanted to say. So that's different from holding a sentence that you've given to them. It's not their sentence. Capture what they want to say. So you can either write the sentence for them, so large letters, good spacing, correct letter formation, so you're modelling. I tell you something I've missed out. I have missed out a massive thing, which is I used to model writing. I didn't have big screen doodads, what they call whiteboards in my day. We just had the old, whiteboards easel, but I used to model writing on there as well and help them to say, where do I start, all that kind of thing. So modeling writing for the larger group is also helpful, or a larger group. So either write it for them, or as I've talked about earlier on, co-construct the sentences. So they write what they know and can do, and then you write the bits that they're unfamiliar with or don't have confidence in. You can use a felt pen. If your paper's not great, mind, it's going to be awful because it'll come through to the next page. So maybe pencils are fine. Have them reread what they've just written, but point to the words, because then you're making writing into a reading activity. So both things support each other. And then the other thing we used to do, this was reception, as I say. We used to make sentence strips, so I'd have my sentence, you know, pieces of paper already cut up, ready to go. And depending on what they'd written, I would write the words again, felt pen. They would read their writing again, pointing to the words. I'd cut it up, we'd shuffle it around a little bit. And then they'd reread it. And then when we used to have dinner money, those little brown envelopes, those used to go home, and then I'd write the sentence on the envelope, and that would go home with the child to read at home. Obviously, I told the parents about what they were going to do. So there's just an example. I hope you can see that. So I went to town on the bus. It could have been, or, you know, it could be something from a retelling, but retelling of a story. But I don't see anything wrong with actually asking children to write about what they've done, which in old money used to be called news. So there's another example of, you'll recognise this one a lot. When they're writing went, invariably the N gets lost in went. Oh, and just to say now, don't go thinking that I want you to draw blue boxes and write with a white pen or anything. It's just for the purposes of the slide. But yeah, I would use my sound boxes again and stretch the words so they could hear the N in went. And we might do that with magnetic letters, and then they would write it. I'd find different ways. And then if I found a lot of children were having problems with that, that would become one of my intentional teaching activities that I'd want them to do. So I'd put that word into the high frequency box, and they could choose different ways of taking it to fluency. Probably some of this is in the wrong order, sorry. But yeah, I think I talked about names are really important for children. So the more often that they see their name and they're asked to write their names, the more they're going to start to recognise and use their names in their work. So you can see some examples here of children attempting their names, and you can see where the ones who are ready to do it and where they're in terms of letter formation and representing their names with letters, and those who are still at that very early stage of travelling marks or making shapes. Very different, very different. I don't know what you do in terms of introducing letter formation. I think it should be a focus for you, whether this is in your head. Again, I don't want it to become something that, you know, you're going to teach them in these groups and that all the children have to do it at a certain time and all that kind of thing. But these are the shapes that fit together best. If you have children who reverse letters, I would say to you, focus on one before you do the one that they confuse. So if it's a B and a D, then focus on your B's and talk about down, back up. This is what I say, down, back up, and a big fat belly. No idea what you say. And probably that's not politically correct, so you can't say that any longer. I do apologise. So use the same pattern, but thinking about, you know, don't introduce those lines too soon, because it's another thing for them to be thinking about, and they need space. That's why I say have that the orientation of your book landscape. So if you just visualize a book, hopefully it's an A4 book, and a child is writing, if you've got it vertically, actually it's really, just try and do it on a table you are now. It's actually quite restrictive. So you would be using mostly the wrist to move across the page. Whereas when it's landscape, you can feel the movement. I can feel the movement up in my shoulder, and I can feel my elbow. So the landscape gives us more room to use all of our muscles that we need for writing. How many of you actually did that little demo? Unmute and tell me at least one of you did it, because I was doing it.
I
Good
did.
girl. So funny. Okay. So yeah, I think I've covered all of this. It does need to be taught. There is that continuum. It takes time to perfect. Consistency, so saying the same things, you know, depending on how you're going to describe the letters, make sure everyone describes the letters in the same way. You know, the traveling bit. So what helps? Practice little and often, providing specific and immediate feedback and praise, developing that automaticity, as it's called, muscle memory. So I recognize how this letter goes now, so I can just do it. And understanding the relationship between what is written and how it is written. That's really important too. I'm not going to focus on the piece of writing there, but you can see, let's see, the leaves from the tree. I don't know if that is going gently on the ground. Scrunchy short leaves on the floor. The short smelly, is it? Leaf is on the floor. Okay. Okay, so I thought I might introduce you to something that I used a long time ago as well, which is Gentry's development stages of spelling. All children go through it. Also, children, like many stages, a bit like block play really, you can be in more than one stage at any one time. So in a piece of writing, you might see some semi-phonetic, you might see correct spelling, and you might see some transitional spelling. I'm not going to bother with the big triangle on the right there, just to say that they updated, Behren et al. Updated Gentry's work, because I think Gentry was like 1980 something. So they just updated it to coincide with, but I should have turned that, I think. I should turn my triangle upside down, shouldn't I? But you can go and look it up, should you so wish. Okay. As I said, right, no one child will be in just one stage at any one time, except for that pre-communicative bit, because they're basically just playing around with shapes. Children show aspects of elements of at least 2 stages, if not more, and teaching needs to lead from behind. So this is coming through, isn't it? I keep on repeating myself. Observe what the child is able to do and needs to do next. So in this one, block play was heavily influencing the children's writing. This is the one where they were building HQs in block play about superheroes. So here are the stages. So the pre-communicative is a mix of letters and numbers and other symbols. No phonetic relationship at all to words. So you might see random things like that. And in fact, if I'd been on a different keyboard, I could have just put in squiggles. The semi-phonetic is where they've got their first approximations. So, and basically in terms of what children hear, generally children hear first and final sounds initially. So they might only write the W and the T from went. Medial sounds come later, so that's why you do a lot of work with CBC words to help them stretch out the first, middle and end sound. So that's why those sound boxes are really helpful in that regard. So first and final, usually what you tend to see when they're starting to write by themselves, and then they'll get that medial in. This one, which should be blue, says my dog went to the park. You might see that quite often. Then that phonetic stage is almost perfect match between the sounds and the letters. So because sounds like because, there will not be one of you in the room that has not seen because spelt like that. What spelt like that, and said spelt like that. And that's why using those phrases, it sounds like that and it looks like that, is really helpful. Really helpful. Because otherwise they get stuck in said. Right, it's 11 o'clock. Got half an hour. Are you still all okay? I'll try and hurry up a little bit. I think maybe I've covered it all, but here are some other ideas, you know, play I Spy, read rhyming text, play rhyming games, teach the correct letter formation, have a go policy, do have a set of high frequency words that children are going to need in their writing, but not too many, so don't overload them with them. And then, you know, if you've got all your books in next week and you looked at, are there any patterns coming through in maybe different groups of children and how they're spelling, how they're writing? And then you can actually, that would be your observation, and then you can feed that into your planning for how you're going to help them to get better, to fix up the things that they may be struggling with at the minute. So getting groups of books together might help you, but knowing how much to help fix up, correct, because if you do it too much, then you know it can inhibit writing. On the other hand, if you don't fix things up, then you are allowing them, encouraging them, enabling them to form a version of that word that is incorrect, and then they have to unlearn it. And it's much harder to unlearn something once you've done it repeatedly than it is to maybe have repeated it a couple of times and then you've got it fixed because your teacher, your adult has helped you. So here's another example of writing. I closed my eyes and I clicked my, I don't know what they are, something ings, but I couldn't work out, to Magic Land. I went to a magic something, had a hot chocolate, and I had a currant bun. It was good. Then I went to a fairy wood, lots of pink, I think this is, and purple. Love that, love it. Fairies. There are fairies, I don't know. Took me home in a carriage. The end. Carriage magic. Interesting, isn't it? Okay, so time for you to unmute because I've been talking a lot. So, as I've said, 2 ways to spell new words. You can segment it, CBC, into the sounds you hear, big, and home is the same. And then what I usually do on home is to say, right, home sounds like that, but you need this on the end to make it look right. Or you visually recall the letters in a word. So like, look, the one was. So looking at that piece of writing, what might you decide? Bear in mind you don't know them, but let's just have a little shot. Somebody unmute and say, what might you choose to focus on and why?
Hi, Gaynor. I might look at the reversal of the J.
Right. Tell me why.
Just because it's a simple fix and then it looks right.
Okay, and it's in it's in 3 places.
Yeah, it's in 3 places. And again, it's like you say, that's something that you don't want them to have to try and unlearn later on.
And it's also a capital when you want them to do a lowercase. So there's a lot in that one, actually.
I would probably look at lots and
right.
something on that line, because you've also got picnic, so you've got some of these middle sounds missing. So I would really help them to sort of segment it and really listen to those sounds, because like you say, you've got lots, picnic, there was another one, took with a different on the end of it.
Yeah.
So I'd probably unpick all of those and get them to really listen to the end sounds and middle sounds.
Brilliant. And would you use those sound letterboxes to help?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Anyone else? No? I think I might have gone for took and home. Like you say, took is almost right. Great. Nearly got it all right. Fantastic. Looks like this. And what I might have done with took is, look. If I know they know look, I would write it. And you want to write took, so it has to look the same because they sound the same. Do you see what I mean? And then with home, I think I would choose home because home comes up quite a lot in stories. So it sounds a bit like that, home, but it looks like this. I think that's what I might have chosen. Okay, there's no right or wrong. We want to see the biggest payoff though. So have a look at this one.
Hi, Gaynor. Sorry, we can
Hiya.
see emails. Somebody scrolling through emails.
Sorry?
We can see someone scrolling through emails rather than the PowerPoint.
Oh no. Can whoever's scrolling through their email
someone
stop?
else, yeah, someone else is accidentally sharing their screen, I think.
Was it just that last one, or was it? Have you been looking at someone's emails for ages?
No, just that last few seconds. It's
Okay. Right, are we back onto this one now, Morris the Magpie?
No, I've got a screen full of all the people present.
Oh no. End show. Right, I'll try and share again. Right.
Okay, that's great.
Okie dokie. Right, I'm going to do it from this current slide. Thank you for that, Leanne. Oh God, why is that not come on from current slide? Right, there we go. Okay. So we've got Morris the Magpie, same sort of thing. Oh, Leanne, you're on my screen now. It's all right, I'm just going to lower you down. There you go. So at the start, Morris is attracted to the rubbish, but is actually horrible. It can suffocate and kill animals. And when Morris notices that it's hurting, I don't know if that to me says Nita, but I don't know if it is. He searched and searched and he found a car and followed it and found a tip. So he warns, the animals they would have something home back in no time, have them back home in no time. So he started to pick up the rubbish and save the wood, the end. Oh, so I've already put on there what I think I might have gone with, but anybody else might go with something else. Great piece of writing, isn't it? Lovely language. So can you see on mine that I probably would look at saved and started because they're correct, and then helped him or her to know that if we're going to, again, it's this thing of suffixes, isn't it? So we have to write the whole word and then add the suffix on the end. So follow, can't even see it now. Where's follow gone? Fine. Oh, there it is. Yeah, there is follow. So he's just, it's the W of follow, and then the ED ending, and searched would be the same thing. ED ending, ED ending. And then the A actually is needed in searched. Okay. So a question for you. Why are retails a good starting point for young writers? Can you tell me what the strengths are here and what you might choose to work on? What are the strengths? What would you just pick out strengths first off? There are lots. Come on.
High frequency words.
Yeah, is that a strength?
Yes.
Definitely. Anything else?
The writing is almost on the line.
Yeah, good letter formation, isn't it? Mostly.
Finger
Might want to
spacing.
fix up finger spacing. Yes, come on, you're good. You're getting it now. Come on.
Capital letters.
Yes.
A few full
Structure
stops.
is there as well. Did you say full stop?
Full stops.
Full stops.
One or
Structure is
two.
there from the retail.
Lots of the words are, you can read, they're phonetically plausible, so they're really easy
Yeah.
to read.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. And then it's, you know, which ones do you pick up to move that writing forward? So I'm suggesting little, particularly if I'm doing lots of retels, because little comes up an awful lot of times. And little would be one of my flashcards. And I think I would also probably choose have. Where's have gone? Yes, these are all of have except for that E. So that would be a nice, easy pickup for both what they look like. Yeah. On slide 38 to 51. So she's going to whip through now. Okay. So transitional is a major move towards conventional spelling. Much greater reliance on those all visual patterns rather than the sound. So they'd be more influenced by what they're seeing in their reading. And you can see that because those irregular letter strings that we have in English, they have more control over them. So you might see some things like this. And in this one, I think we've got Queen without the U. We've got super for superhero. And then everybody. So there's a lot. I think I'm not going to ask you now which ones you'd go for. I think you've got the idea. But again, lots of massive amount of positives in this piece of writing. Massive, lovely, lovely, lovely. But ways that we can help to get even better. So moving from transitional towards correct spelling, obviously providing those opportunities for purposeful writing. Use games and activities to develop those visual strategies. Also, though, read to with by. Have word walls, but don't have them plastered in words, too many. And, you know, it's quite a good thing to, I'm sure you do it, you know, to teach children about knowing the root word and then how you can add letters to the end or letters to the beginning to make them new words. It's quite a nice thing for them to start to play around with words, particularly in year 2. But also some children in year 1, again, depending on where they are in terms of their spelling development. Demonstrating how to use a dictionary, obviously. You can discuss the rules sometimes when it's easy for you to do, but some of the rules are quite tricky to understand, aren't they, really? But anyway, so nearly at the end, actually, because maybe some of these are, yeah, which is be good because I can get the slides down and get a little bit of feedback from you. So basically, you know, this is applying to me now this morning, actually. I'm not going to assume that what I've said is what you've taken in. I'm not going to assume that because you know something, you're going to automatically do it. And I'm not going to assume that what's clear to me in my head from my experience of how I used to work and how I would still work probably is going to be clear to you, given that you've seen it, you've heard it, but it's been, I don't know whether it's enough anyway. So I would quite like for us now to be thinking about today, whether it's been new, familiar or experienced,